Hello everyone, welcome back to Powerful Nothing, a Magic the Gathering Cube podcast. I'm your host Dan, and as always, I'm joined by James. James, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. We are chatting about a new cube today, which is cool.
We are. This is one that you've put together, James. It's a Duel Commander Cube. We have a lot of cool stuff to get through today. Before we jump into our main topic, firstly up top, please consider giving the podcast a like, a thumbs up, a 5-star rating. All that good stuff really helps us out. Also, we are talking about a new cube. A link to that cube will be down in the show notes below. And also, we'll try and read out every card that we talk about. But if we don't, there will also be a link to a card gallery, which has some nice pictures of every card we talk about. So you can check that out as we're talking about them. And also, there'll be time codes as well if you want to jump around to some specific bits of the episode. So with those bits out of the way, James, let's talk about your new cube. So I think the most obvious place to start is, what is a Duel Commander Cube? What are we doing with that?
Yeah, so Duel Commander is a constructed format, which I got mildly into playing last year, which was a lot of fun. But it's basically, rules-wise, it's as a constructed format, it's like a singleton format, but you play normal 2-player games of Magic. You just have a commander. So like 20 life, but Commander works from the command zone as it does in a regular 4-player game of Commander. It's a lot of fun, and I kind of thought the gameplay experience of that might transfer over to Cube quite well, which was kind of a starting point for building this.
No, definitely. Yeah. It functions very much like a regular cube, but you have the added bonus of having that commander available to you. Kind of like from a rules-wise point of view, though, James, can you just drill down into kind of like into what the decks look like? What do the games look like? How are you playing this?
Yeah, for sure. So I think when people hear Commander Cube, right, they sort of assume that it's going to be slow and dirtly and you don't need to do anything until turn 4. And that is true of 4-player Commander Cubes, I think, in a lot of cases. That is not true of Duel Commander Cube. These are one-on-one games, 20 life, so your cheap interaction is good. There are aggressive decks. There are combo decks and stuff too, but it feels more like a regular, like not quite a powered cube, but a highish power level normal cube, but with the added thing of you have a commander to build around, and you have that legend you have access to every game. So anything that synergizes with that legend is going to go really well for you. And obviously plays into very different drafting dynamics as well, because your choice and your card prioritization obviously is going to be very, very different depending on what commander you have locked in, even within the same sort of larger archetype.
Yeah, and one thing I quite like about the way you put this together is that, we're still playing 40-card decks. I know a lot of the kind of commander draft formats that Wizards have made and a bunch of the other commander type cubes out there do 60-card decks. And being honest, I think this works really nicely for our play group. We're kind of like we know how long to like a 40-card deck takes to draft, that kind of stuff. You can we can say hello, have a catch up, do the draft in an hour, then each round is an hour. We know we're going to be done in a certain amount of time. I've personally found that kind of like 60-card decks and like commander decks, drafting those generally take a bit longer just because you're drafting more cards. So that's one benefit I've definitely found from this type of cube being built this way.
Yeah, for sure. Like that was honestly a lot of the reason to build it this way for me was I really like the idea of drafting around a commander. I think it's really cool. But I personally, I have played multiplayer cubes I've enjoyed, but they're not my favorite in general. You know, I feel like the games just go so long, and everyone's sort of weirdly disincentivized from attacking, so you really need to have like a big over-the-top plan, and that feels very you're just like sat there for 2 hours playing a game of Magic, and it's like that's fine for a regular game of Commander, I think, because no one's that invested and we just like show up and play a game, and that's fine. But for Cube, I kind of want to get a few games in with my deck, and that's not really possible in a lot of 4-player cubes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's kind of the point of draft and limited is that you're really never going to play this deck again. If it's Commander, you're going to play that deck again. You can try and get the most out of it. But when it's a draft environment, you're only really going to shoot for it that day, basically. So yeah, being able to play multiple games and generally, like, it's something we should do at some point. Like, I've been kind of tinkering with doing a multiplayer cube, but it would be 20 live 40 card decks because I just find the games are smoother and quicker. But yeah, I like the fact that you've done it for this. Another benefit of doing it this way is that you kind of get the cool part of Commander, but in the time frame and with the power level and consistency that comes from a high-powered cube. Because effectively what we're doing is, it's a really interesting deck building construction where effectively you have access to a 8th or maybe 9th card in your opening hand. And like that can just be the strongest legendary in your deck. But it can also be an engine piece. It can be something that you build around because you know you're going to have access to it for the whole time. And I think as someone who likes building, who the building part of the deck is kind of like, for me, the most fun. I really like the additional design element that comes with this, because it's like, ooh, what cool thing can I build because I have access to this card all the time? And it's kind of like, yeah, it scratches the itch of Commander. You can do the Commander thing while still playing one-on-one draft games that feel very normal, basically, which is something I really like about this cube.
Yeah, for sure. And I quite like as well that you get to do all the stuff which you can't do at most Commander tables because people will get annoyed with you, you know? Like,
yes.
I'm not going to build an Arkham Daggerson EDH deck because everyone will think it's miserable and they will not have a nice time. In a two-player cube environment, Arkham Daggerson seems sweet, and I'm really excited to draft it. Arkham Daggerson side, by the way, is the 4-mana blue legend. You can... It's kind of like a repeatable Tinker on a stick, but on tap. So you've got to untap with it, and you have to sack artifact creatures, and you get a non-creature. But you can just tap it, sack your 1/1, get a Portal to Phyrexia, or you can tap it and set up your like Grindstone combo or something like that. And yeah, that's going to be a miserable EDH deck, right? If you build that, but to draft, that seems sick to me, you know?
No, definitely. And like, one thing that's nice about this environment is that kind of like, in Commander, like generally the commanders tend to be kind of mid-rangey, like on average, a commander tends to be a mid-rangey, value-y engine type thing most of the time. Whereas in this cube, we still like we have aggro decks, we have control decks, we have tempo decks, we have mid-range decks, and we have like combo decks, which can all exist with the commanders. Like I've played against someone in this who's just mono white, screw it, we're running Isamaru, Hound of Condor as our commander. They always have that one drop. That can be quite strong. And like that isn't like in a multiplayer game of Commander where you start on 40 life, Isamaru or like that level of aggro isn't, I mean, all power to you if you want to do that, but you will struggle basically. But in this, it can be like, because you have that lower life total and because it's one-on-one, oddly more decks are viable, I think is a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, that sounds like, I mean, Ismaru is not a great card, right? That doesn't sound amazing when you say it first time out. But actually, like, building a mono white deck where you always have a 1-drop on turn 1 and you never draw a 1-drop later when you don't want it, right? Because you don't have to play other 1-drops in your deck because you always have Isamaru in your opening hand. That's very powerful. And the same applies, like, with curve-out decks in general, like in this cube, if you have that cheap commander, you can then actually deprioritize that spot on the curve for your other creatures, right? So, say you've got Inti as your commander, you don't need to prioritize 2s as highly anymore because you always have that 2, right? So you prioritize 1s and 3s. But then moving away, if you're not in the aggro space and you're more in the like value engine space, as you say, there's then you're more, it's not so much about curve, it's about just prioritizing things which are going to accumulate value with your commander, which is, I guess, where you end up more of the time. But then there's also a lot of combo potential with some of these commanders.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. I think what's nice about it is that you can effectively do what you want with it. It can just be, what's the best card for my strategy? I will play that, so I know I'm always going to hit it on curve. Or you can really take a commander that's a bit more open-ended or a bit more build-aroundy and really build around it because you know it's going to be there. And that for me, I think is one of the strongest things about this cube. But let's keep the ball rolling. Kind of like from a power level point of view, James, like you mentioned you wanted this to be like not a vintage power level, but still quite high power. Like talk to me about like that kind of decision, because there's a lot of strong cards in this cube. Like we most things seem to be quite efficient or like not powered, but like very like most of the cards in this cube would look at home in my unpowered vintage cube, for example. Like would you like what made you settle on that power level?
Yeah, for sure. So I wanted this to be a pretty high power level cube, partly because I was sort of taking inspiration from Duel Commander as a constructed format, which is a very powerful format. I wasn't using it as a guide in terms of, like, there are some cards in this cube which are banned in Duel Commander, for example. I don't really think following ban lists is a super useful way to build cubes generally, but I am using it as like an experience, as a inspiration for like how I want the games to play and stuff, right? So I was going for a pretty high power level in background, and also for the thing of, as I was saying earlier, with I want this to be a place where you can do all the broken stuff you wouldn't do on a normal commander pod, right? So that was sort of a reason to pitch it a fairly high power level. But I did realize quite early on I had to be quite cautious with the power level of some of the commanders. Because I think having some power outliers in a cube is pretty good, right? Because it gives you a bit more of a dream. It means your decks have higher potential. But when that isn't potential, that's the thing they do every game because it's in your command zone, I think that's not a great experience. Like, I think having the very best cards in the cube be commanders would actually be a mistake, because then the whole game is about that card every single time, right? Like, imagine a red deck with Ragavan as the commander, and you'll just have turn one Ragavan every single game. That's going to get quite repetitive, yes. I think.
Exactly, yeah. It's also not interesting, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's a card that just takes over the game and just kind of... Yeah, you're right. It makes the game be about it immediately. Kind of like, I can see that kind of in a similar vein, we don't have like a Ajani Nagatal Pariah in here. I'm assuming that's a similar sort of choice of like... very, very strong card, but like when you're building this type of cube, you just have to be more careful when it comes to putting a powerful legendary in over anything else, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Like if I sit down, my opponent I have this Ragavan as my commander, I have to mulligan to a hand that can not get hit by Ragavan on turn 2, right?
Yeah.
And that, I don't think that's that fun, personally. When you're like, oh, well, my hand can like do some other kind of interesting stuff, but it's going to take 2 hits from Ragavan before I can do anything about it. So I have to mulligan. Like, I think that kind of sucks, you know? So yeah, I was like, I think the 1-drops have to be a little bit toned down. And things like Urza, for example, is not in this cube. Urza, Lord High Artificer, even though Tolarian Academy is. Because Tolarian Academy is in your 40-card deck, and you have to draw it for your Academy deck to do its Busted Tolarian Academy thing. Urza in your command zone, definitively there every game, I think not as cool.
No, exactly. And like, I think just coming back to it, I can see specifically why you didn't follow the banned and restricted list for Duel Commander. Firstly, because as far as I can tell, there's 2 different websites telling me 2 different bits of information. I don't know if I've missed some tea there at some point, but it looks like drama that we're not getting involved with. But specifically as a format, they have banned as commander and banned in the deck, which is not something that which we are doing in this cube. If you draft it, it can be your commander. Is that kind of like, was that part of it as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Banned as commander wouldn't work in cube. Also, the ban list is kind of nonsensical. Like, I think Vamp is banned, but DT isn't. Like, none of this makes sense. I think some, this is a staple of the format thing, whatever. But I do think it's a good gameplay experience as a format. So that I was more like leaning on it as a, it would be cool if the game's played out like this, right? And I took a lot of the sort of staple commanders from Duel Commander and put them in the cube. Stuff like Malcolm, the blue-red legend. It's like, this is cool. You can draft a good blue-red tempo spellsy deck. And that's a thing from Duel Commander too. My absolute favorite deck in that format was a Glob value deck. Do you know Glob, the Sultai legend? It's very cool.
Is that the frog?
Yeah, it's like a 2/4 Death Touch for free. You can play lands.
I think they got printed after I tried to build every Sultai commander. It's on the list, James. It's on the list.
Okay, yeah. I'd recommend it. Good project.
One other important thing that kind of always comes up when there is drafting a commander in any sort of limited environment is how color identity works. Like whenever we've seen this in limited draft, it's where like stuff like partner gets used, or there's like colorless commanders or backgrounds that can kind of go with another card to kind of give you that dual colors or maybe even tricolors. Like when I've done the Gavin Verhey mystery events at like Magicons, they've kind of done rules of like any monocolored commander can partner with any other monocolored commander. This is something you've had to think about, obviously, James. Like, how have you decided to run with it in this cube?
Yeah, this is actually the sort of decision point that I found most challenging building this cube. So we've done a couple of rule sets. I'm quite happy with the one we're on now, but I knew the sort of default commander color identity rules were just going to be too restrictive, right? Firstly, it makes monocolored commanders incredibly challenging to play, right?
Yeah, because it's still a draft as well. Like think about how hard it is to be monocolored in a regular draft format. Like draft formats are generally two colors because the cards you're seeing and what is open in your seat, if that makes sense. Like being a monocolored generally is quite hard in limited.
Yeah, for sure. It's really tough to be genuinely monocolored, and even beyond that, right? So even if you draft a 2-color commander, it's just taking away so many options from you in the draft, right? Like say I see a Vivianitier, for example, early, the blue-red commander, very powerful. And I move in, I draft some blue and red spells, and then blue and red kind of dries up a little bit. I don't have any options now if I want to keep using my VV, right? So I have to pivot and find like a commander in a different color. And I think that what that would often end up with is you end up just playing a commander for the colors, right? You're mostly picking your commander to satisfy color identity rather than genuinely like building around it and trying to maximize it. And so that to me kind of defeats the point in doing a commander cube, right? If you can't really try and build around your commander in a synergistic way.
Well, on the flip side as well, like there's definitely the world where that VV player just takes VV sometime in pack 1 and then their draft is on the rails for then onwards, and like they might not be like they could just be passing all the good cards like another deck is open, but it's like, well, I've got this VV and it's really good, but kind of like so that's kind of the flip side of that as well. It can lead, like, I think just being as strict as it could be not only can lead to a less fun gameplay experience, but also from a cube construction point of view, it would mean you would need to spend a lot of time seeding in legendaries at different colors and maybe look at something like partner. But kind of like let's actually go through. I think that this might be interesting. Kind of go through the different iterations that you've gone through, and then we'll go over the one that you've actually settled on. So kind of when you first drafted this, James, what was the first iteration of like how did commanders work? How did color identity work when you first built this?
Yeah, so one thing I've had all the way through is the color identity of your commander doesn't just actually restrict what spells you can put in your deck. It restricts what basic lands you have access to from the basic land box. So I like this because it gives you the freedom to splash anything you want from the draft if you can. It gives you that flexibility, but you have to work for it if it is outside the colors of your commander by aggressively drafting the fixing you need or what have you. It also, I like that it gives you the opportunity to put off-color spells in your deck if you don't need to cast them. Something like Bolus's Citadel might go in a blue deck that is trying to cheat it into play as an artifact, right? I think it is good to not take that possibility away from people.
Yeah, as a restriction, I think it's worked really well. It means that there's still something you have to build around. It's not just free, you can't just run any commander that you want. But it means, like, say you take some cards in pack 1 and then have to pivot to a different color, it means they're not dead, because if you draft your lands, you can still play those cards, which is quite nice. How have you found its play, James?
So I think that is good for addressing the problem of the draft being too on rails, but it doesn't actually address the monocolored problem that well, right? Because even with the possibility to splash other stuff, it's going to be really hard to draft, say, a Yawgmoth Fan Physician deck, say, the mono black commander, and have a genuinely black 2-color deck. You'd still have to be like almost entirely black cards because you wouldn't have access to any other basics, right? So to address that, I initially went with everyone gets a Prismatic Piper at the start of the draft. That's the...
Yeah, I'll just read that quickly. It's a 5... this is from Commander Legends. This is how they addressed it in that set. It's a 5 generic 3/3. If a legendary creature shapeshifter, if the Piper is your commander, choose a color before the game begins. The Prismatic Piper is the chosen color, and it has partner. So that's how that works. But how were you running it in the draft? Were you saying that any monocolored commander could partner with the Piper?
So I initially said any commander could partner with the Piper, which is obviously like, so that's giving people very much fewer restrictions, right? You get to add basically a free color onto your commander's color identity. I think it was fine, but also a lot of the decks didn't actually need it. And it felt kind of... I also didn't like that people got it for free and would then put it in their command zone just to be able to run one fewer cards in their deck. That feels kind of bad. And have this random 5-mana 3/3 commander that doesn't do anything. Whereas in reality, like most of the decks people drafted, it felt like they didn't actually need that because they had a gold commander, which... but those are the colors of their deck. So what I've kind of settled on is the Pipers are only going to partner with monocolored commanders, and you're not going to start with them. They're going to be in the cube. So there's 5 in at the moment. You draft them like any other cards. So if you want to play a monocolor commander, you can prioritize a Piper, and then you get to play an extra color.
Yeah, that reminds me. We'll actually we've made slight alters to this. We'll put a printable version of this in the show notes as well. If you want to print these out and proxy them for yourselves, these are the cards that actually appear in James's cube, which is quite nice. I would like to ask you, James, like, in your opinion, why did you not go with the every monocolored commander has partner, which they've done in like mystery events and stuff that they're like Magicons?
Yeah, good question. So the issue I have with this, right, is that I think if you have... Firstly, it makes monocolored commanders way better than the gold commanders, right? If they all partner with each other, because you just have 2 commanders, and that's really powerful. So to compensate for that, I'd really have to tone down the power level of the monocolored commanders. And I don't really want to. I think a lot of them are cool. Like, I want to have Emery in my cube, and I want to have Sai in my cube. But I think the mono-blue artifacts deck running Emery and Sai as the commanders might be a little bit too much, you know? So that was one reason. The other reason is I actually think it would get pretty boring. Like, imagine you're playing an aggro deck and you have a 2-mana and a 3-mana commander. and every single game, you're just going to curve the same 2-drop into the same 3-drop. I think I think by the end of round 3, you're kind of bored, you know?
Well, effectively most of the other cards you play don't matter. Like say you go into Adeline or something like that. Like that seems quite easy to win a game of Magic if you do. Like that's good enough for the regular Mitgo Vintage Cube. But like if it's guaranteed in your hand, and that's for me, I think the main reason why I like the Pipers, because yes, it's because like when you partner, effectively you are adding 2 guaranteed cards you have access to play. They can't both be bangers, if that makes sense. Like they both can't be like I know partners in regular Commander are very strong and very broken, but there's a reason why the original 2 dual color partners, they're all a bit weak actually. Like that whole cycle of them. I know that that they are mainly good because of the colors that they give you access to. But imagine if they were good. Imagine if they were super efficient commanders that also gave you access to all the colors. That's one of the reasons why I like something like the Pipers. I think is a nice check on that, because you can have one aggressive card and the other one is just there to fix, but it's not a 5-mana 3/3 with no other abilities feels fine to give you access to a whole nother color and be able to play a whole nother color in your deck by giving you access to the basics. I quite like that.
Yeah, for sure. The Pipers do not actually feel like having 2 commanders, right? It's very rare you see one cast. It's like sometimes you flood out and you have nothing else to do, and sure, you'll play it, but it's not what the card's there for.
Yeah, I like the way you've done the color identity and the Pipers and the whole package of this in this cube, because it means that I mean this in a good way, that it means that putting the rest of the cube together is more straightforward than having to worry about, is this efficient legendary 2-drop too good because they can partner it with this. It's given you more freedom to just play cool cards. It's a nice little release valve on the pressure of just cards being too strong, basically. Like it's what you were saying about yes, you haven't got Ragavan, but you still have Inti, you still have Lelia, you're still able to play these super efficient aggressive cards because there is it's not free to just run another color with them, which you might get if you were doing other rule sets, basically. So yeah, I quite like the way that I think it works very smoothly, basically. Right, let's keep it rolling and let's move on to archetypes, James. Talk to me about what the decks you can build in this cube are. Do you want to kick off?
Yeah, for sure. So the archetypes are sort of pretty fluid by design. This very much isn't a cube where you're like, okay, I'm in blue-red and this is the blue-red archetype, so that's what my deck is doing, you know? What your deck is doing is going to be more determined by the commander you're playing and by the card choices you made, right? It's not going to be that sort of unveils this color identity is doing this thing. But having said that, they very much are still archetypes. They're just a bit more big picture and a bit more fluid than they might otherwise be. So partly for that reason, they're not so much based around color pairs as a lot of the archetypes have sort of one color where they're more primarily supported. And then they branch out into multiple different other colors. So, for example, the Discard Matters or Madness type deck is a red-based deck, but with bits of black, bits of green in there as well. So you might be, if you're doing the Discard Matters Madness stuff, you could be mono-red even, you could be red-green, you could be red-black, you could be the full Jund, but you probably wouldn't be black-green because it's you have that sort of density in red that's going to support it. And then, you can splash around or be a straight-up 2-color deck in any of those other colors.
No, that's nice. Yeah. We'll kind of touch on that as we go through every deck, but I like the fact that I did something similar with my Treat Yourself cube, and when there's an element of building an engine, not just being raw efficiency, having multiple places you can go with a deck, I think is nice. And especially when color identity does matter in this, it adds a whole nother level of, well, do I have a commander to let me play all these colors? This kind of stuff. I think that's quite a nice way of taking it. Like, yeah, like it means that, like in this cube where splashing is a real cost, you have to work out where is this awesome card worth splashing for, and can I make it work? And those, just having more options and choices like that, I think makes the whole thing more interesting. But again, you touched on how madness and discard is over like the Jund spectrum. Talk to me about the next one, like aristocrats. That's what are we doing with that?
Yeah, so this is very much a black-based archetype. We're doing the classic, make lots of tokens, sacrifice them for value. It can be pretty aggressive, but probably your average one is going to be more about the grindy accumulating value stuff. So we're sort of in the Mardu colors, but yeah, so you could be black-red, you could be black-white. I think there's a few really good commanders here. Yargmuth is probably the one that sort of jumps off the page a little bit. That does some obviously like a really powerful engine with any sort of token generation. There's also stuff like braids if you want to go for a more like stacksy aristocratsy stuff. That's pretty good if you can make a lot of tokens. There's also some combo bits in there, like Micaeus the Unhallowed as your commander has some pretty interesting combo potential. But obviously going up to a 6-mana commander is a pretty real cost.
Yeah, and I can see, like, if you can make the colors work, a card like Caesar Legion's Emperor, this one I think is very strong and kind of like it shows, like, it's a good signposter. Here is what Mardu is doing, basically. It's 1 and a Mardu for a 4/4 legendary creature, human soldier. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, choose 2. You can either create 2 1/1 red and white soldier creature tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking. You can draw a card and lose 1 life, or you can have it deal damage equal to the number of creatures you control to target opponents. So that's kind of, if you see Caesar early, that is a good way of getting into that deck, basically, which I think is quite nice.
Yeah, for sure. And sort of the intention with this cube, right, is that there's enough legendaries where you can take the powerful spells for an archetype early, and if that archetype is open, you will get a good commander. You shouldn't have to be like, oh, I can't take that spell because I don't have a good commander for it. Yeah. But yeah, I think Caesar's really good. You can even go into green for, I think one of the best aristocrats decks I've actually seen drafted in this cube was a Corvold Fakehurst King deck.
Yeah. That's a very strong one. Yeah, that's the big dragon that when it attacks, you can sacrifice a permanent. Oh no, when it enters or attacks, you sack a permanent, and whenever you sack a permanent, put a counter on it and draw a card. And importantly, those two are not linked.
Yes.
So you sack things, you start drawing through your deck, and your big flying commander gets very big very quickly.
Certainly does.
So that's very cool. And there's a bunch of individually, there's like token stuff in white and red, as well as some more aristocratic stuff in black, which is quite nice. Like Sephiroth just actually being a blood artist effect on a commander it's quite a nice version. So that's quite cool. Talk to me about Green X lands, James. So is this a play as many colors type of lands deck, or is it a play lots of lands type of deck, or is it doing something else? Like, what are we doing with the Green X lands package in here?
So hopefully you can sort of do any of those things that you would like to do. There's some combo-y stuff, but there's also there's a lot of like graveyardy land stuff in here. So things like the Gitrog monster can go pretty hard. And you've got stuff like Splendid Reclamation and Aftermath Analyst to get all your lands back from your graveyard. That's played out pretty well, actually. But yeah, lands is very much you can be green with any and all of the other colors. There are some really powerful lands-based commanders in mono green, though, so you might want to. I'm not saying you will ever really be mono green, but you may well often sort of have a mono green commander and therefore not have basics for the other colors, but you can obviously get fixing in a lot of other ways in your lands deck. But yeah, like commanders like Azusa, I think, is really, really powerful in this cube because you have bounce lands, you have a bunch of ways to play lands out of your graveyard. So anything that gives you extra land drops is going to be really good. And Azusa with the 2 extra land drops, I think, can go pretty hard actually in your command zone. It's one of those effects where it's kind of a tough card to make work in a regular cube, right? Because you have to make a lot of sacrifices to make it good, and then when you don't draw it, you kind of have a bunch of janky bounce lands and then none of it really works. But when it's in your command zone, so you get it every game, it is worth leaning into it enough, you know?
More for my own benefit, like, if Azusa's your commander, are you running more lands?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time you will. But really what you want to do is find ways to make multiple land drops without having to draw that many lands, right? So, for example, if you have a Crucible and a fetch land, then your land drops don't cost you a card, right? So you're just playing that for 3 times a turn from your graveyard. You're going to fetch every land out of your deck pretty quickly. The reason why the bounce lands are really good, right, is they're essentially 2 land drops, right? They tap for 2 mana, but they only cost you 1 card. So I think you want to do as much of that stuff as you can. Like Lotus Field, I think, goes really well here as well, because it's, if you're getting those lands back out of your yard, it's basically 3 land drops, right, in one actual land.
No, that's very cool. Titania is in here. Like, how? Like, are you? I wasn't there for the one where this popped off, but talk to me about the Titania lands deck, kind of like how that can really do some dumb things.
Yeah, Titania, I think, is one of the more powerful commanders in this cube. I will say it is probably like on a watch list at this stage, you know. So I think the first draft we did, I had a Titania Zeranorb deck, which it went very, very hard. So I was also running things like Lion's Eye Diamond as just a very all-in way to get your Titania out incredibly early. So I think there were games where it was like, you know, turn 1 fetch lands, turn 2 you go Lion's Eye Diamond, Zeranorb, crack my diamond, discard the rest of my hand, play Titania, return a fetch land, sack all my lands. I have like 25 power on turn 2. You know, it's one of the more bust stuff you can do. Obviously, you also have no lands and no cards in your hand, so the game's ending one way or another. But it's really hard for them to beat.
Yeah, you do have 25 power in play. I mean, there is a world where the combo piece and the Lion's Eye Diamond, famously fair Magic cards, could also be the problem in that situation. But yeah, that is a very cool thing that you can do.
It's possible. I mean, and obviously you need like a lot to come together for that to work, right? That's like that's the ceiling. The insane thing is actually that I lost that game.
What did they have, James? What did they have?
Oh, it was like kill the Titania, double block another token, and then the next turn, like cast Flicker Wisp, which is actually the perfect card. Flicker a token, trade with another token, and manage to stabilize from there. It was a really cool game, actually.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Let's keep it going. Talk to me about artifacts. So artifact seems to be base blue, but it seems to be touching every color apart from green. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, very much so. So I think sort of different colors and different flavors. So we have a pretty big range, I think, here from like really big mana artifacty stuff. So obviously sort of leaning into the Tolarian Academy and whatnot. And but then down to the more beatdowny artifact stuff. We've got commanders like, for example, Mendicant Core from Ether Drift, which is a sort of cheap creature, power equal to a number of artifacts you control, doing a bit more of a BattleBots type thing. But then a lot of power here is, the mono blue artifacts commanders, obviously very, very powerful. As mentioned earlier, no Urza, but there is things like Psi mapped Master Fopterist, Emery, Lurker of the Lock, things like the Reality Chip, actually, I think is pretty strong. And then some interesting gold commanders too. I really like the Esper which is basically makes a construct on each end step. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, if you can cast that, that's extremely strong. We also have Shroom here. Is the Shroom combos in here, James? Did you have to be careful there?
So Shroom, the idea is you're trying to you're playing a bunch of graveyardy stuff. You mill over your giant artifacts and then reanimate it.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's Shroom and a way of cloning an artifact, and then like a Blood Artist effectively is infinite death triggers, which is quite hard. That's something we can get onto in a little bit, but I don't see that in the cube, which is probably a good thing because it's one of the reasons why you don't see it in Command as much, because it's one of the ones where you build it once and I've done the thing, move on, if that makes sense. It's like having a combat piece in the command zone is something you do have to be careful for. So it is nice to see the kind of I can see you've been careful with that, which is nice. Talk to me about Naya tokens. That seems to be another. Kind of white is the main color in this, but then red and green seem to be helping out as well. Talk to me about that deck.
Yeah, so this is, I think you can be a very sort of streamlined white-based aggressive tokens deck is certainly a very real thing. Like Adeline is obviously a pretty strong beatdown commander. Something like Akal, Anim Pakal, I think it's called. The Boros is kind of like a Rabble Master. So there's a bunch of that stuff going on. But then if you lean a bit more, I'd say, on the green side, you also have a bit more of the go a bit longer, make a lot of bigger tokens, make a lot of mana sort of plan, you know? And you can lean into things like the... if you get Gaia's Cradle, for example, going really wide, making a Gaia's Cradle, you can do all of that stuff too. And the sort of a pivot between this and the artifacts, I guess, the Retrofitter Foundry can go pretty hard here. You've got some interesting combos actually with that, and the Stride Hanger Automaton has been a combo that I've come up a couple of times and is really powerful actually. So that's the 3-mana artifact creature where whenever you make a token, you get that token plus an additional Thopter. So with Retrofitter, you can sack a Thopter, make a 4/4 and a Thopter, untap your Retrofitter, keep going. So yeah, the token stuff I would say is where the aggro decks live a lot of the time, but there's also some powerful late game stuff if you want it as well.
No, definitely, that makes sense. Then Grixis, James. Grixis is like a spell, or the Grixis Shard. I'm going to go with Shard. Seems to be kind of like a spell slinger type of thing. Like our Grixis commanders, we have things like Kess Dissident Mage and Cereman the White. And then there seems to be a bunch of other ones in those kind of colors. What's Spellslinger doing, James? And is this a blue first, and then the other ones are kind of splashed, red and black are splashed out from there?
I'd say blue and red can both be pretty central here. So this is, you can sort of have the whole range of control up to something fairly beatdowny, I think, within this archetype. So, for example, you drafted a Kess Dissident Mage control-y spellsy deck that looked very powerful.
Yeah, that deck was awesome. It was just Kess, play all my removal spells twice. Removal and shooters twice. It was very strong.
Yeah, seems really good. But then you've also got stuff like Balmor Battle Mage Captain. That's the blue and a red for a 1/3. When you cast an instant or sorcery, all your creatures get +1/+0 and trample until end of turn. So if you can do that with a, say, a Young Pyromancer type effect, go wide, you can kill them pretty quickly doing that. So yes, I think something like VV is also a really, really powerful commander in this place. So yeah, hopefully a good bit of flexibility here with how aggressive you want to be.
Nice. And then, keeping it rolling, moving on to Abzan. There seems to be kind of like doing what Abzan does best, of kind of like a creature combos and like a toolbox type of things. Like we've got a bunch of cool ETBs, we've got ways of finding our creatures, and we've got ways of kind of like sacking and recurring them. There's like Chthonian Nightmare, there's Recurring Nightmare, kind of like pieces are going around zones, but you're kind of primarily focusing on like the ETBs of stuff. Is that fair to say what you're doing with this sort of deck, James?
Yeah, this is one hasn't got drafted a bunch yet, and I really want to see it work out, so I might force it next time we draft, to be honest. I'm staking my claim now. So this is basically, I've just got all the cool Abzan creature combo cards, put them in with a bunch of ways to find them. You know, you've got the Birthing Pod, you've got the Zenith, you've got the Worldly Tutor. And I think there's probably, and my hope is that you can just take those cards early, spec on one half of enough combos, and you're sort of almost guaranteed to get there on some of them. Plus, there's some commanders which do some combo-y stuff in this space. So, Safi Eric's Daughter, I think, is a pretty cool one. That's the...
I do like some Safi combos. They're very cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's the green and a white... 2/2, you can sack it when a creature is put into your graveyard from play this turn. You can you get it back. So there's actually a bunch of ways to combo with this card, but one of the easiest is something like an Extraction Specialist, where when it enters, you get something a small creature back to play. So you sack Safi to target your Extraction Specialist, you sack your Specialist, it comes back, Safi comes back, we go round and around. Then there's also stuff like the Heliod Walking Ballista combo is, again, another combo where half of it can live in your command zone, which is quite powerful, I think. But you are giving up something there because Heliod is not a great card when it isn't comboing. There's not really a big life gain theme here, we're more just doing it for the combo element, you know? And even into black, we've got stuff like, the Machias can do some combo stuff. There's also the like Samwise Gamgee, there's some of the food combos in here as well. So yeah, it was kind of throw all the combo cards at the wall and see what works, you know?
There is... I don't mean to... There is one combo card I don't see in here, and maybe because it's doing stuff with counters, but... I'm assuming Gave Guru of Spores must combo with some stuff in this cube. Like, I've had a bunch of Gave decks in my time, and it's kind of impossible to not trip over your own combo in that deck. That is doing stuff with counters, though, so maybe... Because there isn't really a counters theme in this, is there? So...
There's not a counters theme, but maybe it can work. I'll look into that one. I'll put that one on the watch list for possible
every
ads.
person who's ever had a Gave deck, either... No matter what your intention is, you have found a combo while playing the Gave deck.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look challenging. You didn't know existed.
It's. I will read it for those Cube players who haven't experienced Gave in the wild in Commander. Gave Guru Spores is 2 white, black, and a green for a 0/0 legendary creature fungus shaman. It enters with 5 +1 counters on it. You can pay 1 to remove a counter from a creature you control to create a green 1/1 green sapling creature token, and you can pay 1 to sack a creature to put a counter on target creature. So there's a bunch of ways. There's a lot of stuff that goes infinite with this. Like any on EDH, Rick, there are 2,729 combos with this card.
Probably one of them's already in, yeah.
One of them's probably in the cube. Jesus, yeah. But yeah, that's potentially one to consider. But let's keep going. But
that's a great point, actually. And I will look at that one. And this actually raises the point of an issue I have had building this cube is I don't play tons of Commander. Basically, I play Commander with our play group where it's not super high power level. So I don't know some of the Buster's commanders, so please tell me about them, and I might add them.
That's where I come in. Don't worry. I've got you, my boy. I've got you.
Extend that to the comments to tell me commanders you think are cool, and I might put them in.
Nice. Cool. Let's keep it going, though, because we have one more big archetype to go through, and it's one of my favorites. It's Sultai. Sultai is doing like a self-mill graveyard sort of thing. Kind of like, talk to me about this deck. What are kind of like the key cards and what stands out to you?
Yeah, so this is basically mill yourself a lot, and there's a variety of ways to profit. So Teval is a card I really like for this. That's the Sultai commander. It's like 4 mana 4/4. When it attacks, you mill 3, return a land, and it whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, you make a 2/2. This, I think, is a nice archetype of sorts of commands that I think work really well here, because it's a good build around. And you can sort of do your Insidious Roots type thing, and that's pretty powerful. But it is also a commander that is a 4 mana 4/4 flyer. And in the one-on-one world where we're playing with 20 life, that does matter a lot too. We also got things like Hogak. Debatable if you want this if this is better as your commander or in your deck, but I think it can be pretty powerful in both. We do have stuff like the Altar of Dementia to go off with that. And I really like there's an addition from a new set I really like here as well, which is Luan Imperfect Naturalist, which is the 2 Golgari mana for a 1/3. When it enters, you mill 4, you can put a creature or land on top from among them, and then you can just tap it to cast Worm Harvest. So it's...
That's very cool.
Yeah. So 5 mana, tap, discard a land, make a 1/1 for each land in your graveyard. So yeah, it's basically a bunch of ways where you can mill yourself and put a bunch of stuff into play, is what Sultai is doing.
Yeah, it's insidiousroots.deck, and I am all here for it. That's everything I want to bring in a game of Commander. That's very cool. Yeah, so again, those are kind of like the overarching archetypes, but like, yeah, I like the fact that they are quite fluid, and it's not, you have choices as you're going into decks, and like each deck has a bunch of different commanders. That like each deck has a 3-color commander, but it also has a bunch of 2-color commanders, which is also quite nice. It means that and also because of the way that you built it, a key point you've mentioned is that if you're in the deck and the commander is opened, it should come to you. People aren't going to be specking on like in pack 1 potentially. If someone sees a powerful commander, they might take it. But like in packs 2 or 3, if you're the one who's in the aristocrat deck, if Caesar gets opened, it should come round to you basically, which is nice. I'm assuming that was in like having multiple options for you was something that was intentional. Kind of like what else did you do, James, to make sure that everyone gets a good commander?
Yeah, basically there's loads and loads of legendary creatures in this cube. Like at every slot, if I was like, is there a legendary creature that does this thing, then I will default towards the legend, because I just want there to be enough where you're not worried about ending up with a bad commander, or not getting the right commander for your colors. Like, you might not get the perfect commander of everything that's in the cube, but it should be, if you're, say you open your first pack, there's like a fast bond there, and you're like, great, I'm going to do the land thing, I'm going to do the fast bond thing, I'll take the fast bond, I'll take like a Crucible of Worlds, yada, yada, yada. You're at the end of pack 1, you still don't have a commander, but you have a bunch of powerful land cards. I want that to be okay, I want there to be enough legends where you're like, I will definitely get at least a pretty good commander for my lands deck, if even though I don't have one yet, So yeah, I just want you to be able to sort of spec on powerful synergy cards early, and have a bit of faith that the commander will work itself out, right? But having said that, what commander you end up with is obviously going to affect which cards you want. So there's something to be said for trying to lock in your commander early, but yeah, there's certainly some flexibility built in there. But yeah, like if you're in the sort of blue artifacts deck, for example, which artifacts and which spells you want for your deck is obviously going to be very different depending on if you're, say, a Psy Master Fopterist deck or an Arkham Daggerson deck. So knowing which one of those camps you're going to fall into early is still important. But it shouldn't be like, I have to take the commander first and then draft the deck. You should be able to just take good cards and get a commander later.
Yeah, I think the important thing of what you just said there is what the difference between the Psy deck and the Arkham deck is one wants lots of artifacts, one wants big artifacts. That makes sense. Again, different decks in the same realm, but again, having that variety is nice. Like it's we've gone over blue X's artifacts, but there's different decks within it, and that's one of the things that's nice about having it be a commander cube like this is the commanders can lead you down different directions. They can be niche, they can be more general, and that's quite a cool thing. Given the fact that everyone starts with a commander in the command zone, how did that affect your choice for the other cards in the cube? So the cards that aren't specifically legendaries that can be run as your commanders, like the other 400 or so odd cards. Like at a base level, I can see that there's no Caracas in here. That seems like a sensible choice. But kind of like how did that affect the other cards you picked, basically?
Yeah, so actually one of the things that has been quite cool building this cube is there are a bunch of cards that you get to include that don't really work if you don't have a commander in your command zone. So, for example, things like the cycle of legendary sorceries from Dominaria, for example, has been really cool. And that doesn't work in most cubes, right? Because you just don't have the density of legends, whereas here you do. So, yeah, I've got like Yawgmoth's Vile Offering and Jaya's Immolating Inferno in at the moment. That's the black and the red one. They're pretty powerful, expensive cards, but yeah, with the cycle of legendary sorceries, you can only cast them if you have a legendary creature in play. So in most cubes, that's going to be too restrictive. In this cube, it isn't. That's kind of nice, I think. There's also, for example, the cycle of cards that are free if you control your commander. These are really powerful. Honestly, they're kind of on the watch list. I saw you ruining everyone's day with Deadly Rollick, I think it is, which is the black removal that's free if you control your commander. So
Deadly Rollick is 3 and a black for an instant. If you control your commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, and its exile and its ability is exile target creature. So I had this in a deck with Kess as the commander, and I also had a bunch of tutors. So my game plan was pretty much tutor for Deadly Rollick, on turn 4 cast Kess, then exile 2 of their things.
Yeah, that's pretty gross.
It's quite strong, and that is quite gross. I can see why you put them in there. These are great, fantastically powerful cards. I can see why you're watching them. I would agree on both aspects.
Cool, yeah. I didn't include Fierce Guardianship, which is the like negate that's free if you have your commander. I thought that one might be too much. Deadly Rollick definitely on a watch list. Deflecting Swat I think is cool. That's the red one where you get to redirect. But yeah, those cards are very powerful. There's also a bunch of cards that just that work in specific decks, though, more like synergy cards that care about commanders. So Skyfire Phoenix, I think, is a nice one here. That's the it's a 4-mana 3/3 flying haste. But when you cast your commander, you return it from your graveyard to play. So this is nice in this cube, I think, because it actually doesn't really work in any other format, right? Because in actual Commander,
it does
you
nothing.
don't care about your 3/3 flyer that you got for free, right? It's just not high impact enough to, everyone has 40 life, you have too many opponents. And it doesn't work in any format without a commander, obviously. But in Duel Commander specifically, I think this is a pretty strong card for the Discard Matters Madness deck, actually. Like, you just discard it early, cast your commander, you get it back for free, and 3/3 Flying Haste is a pretty potent threat. Poxwalkers works in a similar way. Obviously, you can get that back in a bunch of other ways, but it does work by casting your commander from the command zone. So it just says whenever you cast a card from anywhere other than your hand. There's also just a bunch of interactive spells which line up particularly well against commanders. So things like Wash Away is a counter in blue. So it's a blue to counter target spell that wasn't cast from its owner's hand. But it's got the cleave mechanic, so you could also pay. Okay. You can pay the full 3 mana, and it's basically just a cancel to 3 mana counter anything. But yeah, this is so 3 mana counter anything, but 1 mana counter a commander is actually pretty powerful, because you can often predict what turn your opponent's going to cast their commander and leave a blue up for that turn. And yeah, things like Price of Fame, where it's cheaper if you target a legendary. I just found there are quite a lot of cards like that.
Yeah. There's Tail's End as well. 1 a blue, counter target, activated ability, triggered ability, or legendary spell. That's quite a nice one because, to an extent, you do see their commander coming. They're going to try and play it on curve most of the time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not a secret, right? It's, so you can plan around it.
No, fantastic. So we've gone over our commanders and we've gone over our kind of like cool cards that we can run, like cards like Deadly Rollick, which are awesome cards that we can now run in this environment that we can't run in a normal cube because we have commanders, because we're introducing that as a thing. But like, talk to me about like the rest of the cube, in terms of a base. Like we touched on that it does look that power level wise, it's similar to a unpowered vintage cube, kind of like. Is that the point of inspiration for the rest of the cube? Because like a lot of the rest of the cards in here do look quite efficient. Like we have Lightning Bolt, we have Path to Exile, we have Duress, we have Careful Study, we have all kind of like the just bread and butter cards that you would expect to see. Like we have Birds of Paradise in here, like this kind of stuff. Like it's in terms of the rest of the cube. Have you gone for the more efficient cards or the more big mana commander cards? Because like as a kind of point, like is it closer to like the Mitgo Vintage Cube, or is it closer to like my Treat Yourself Cube, where like the removals at like 3 or 5 mana, that kind of stuff? Like where on the spectrum in terms of speed and efficiency would you say the cube is sitting?
Yeah, we're definitely about efficient cards here. So, and this I think has to be the case if you're going to run reasonably powerful commanders, right? You have powerful game pieces that your opponent always has access to and has built their deck around. If you don't have efficient interaction for those creatures, then the games are just going to be, 2 cards passing in the night, and they're going to be over really, really quickly. So yeah, the interaction is pretty efficient. I would say I mean, it's pretty much like max efficiency. Honestly, we've not gone very bust. There's no like there's no Swords to Plowshares in, so we've cut like a couple of the absolute most efficient ones. But yeah, we've got really good interaction. We've got good cantrips, and the idea is right. I don't like. We've talked a lot about the sort of packages of synergies and the build around the commanders, and that's an important part of it. But the thing is, if you make the whole cube about this card's really cute with this commander over here, and this card only works with this commander, then you just end up with no one has functional decks, right? And then the only things that actually matter are the commanders, because the rest of your deck isn't doing much, because you got the few little bits that were good for your commander, but then a lot of the other cards are meant to be working in some other space, and you don't have that flexibility to pivot around in the draft. So yeah, there's a solid like base of just good cards in across most of the colors. We've got the interaction, we've got the selection, we've got the good and some pretty good ramp in green as well.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we have Birds of Paradise, we have the Hierarchs. That's all nice to see. And also worth mentioning as well is that the fixing is good. I think most, like the dual colors each have 6 options plus triomes, plus a bunch of like 5 color lands, like including things like Lotus Field and Lotus Vale and the like. So kind of like that kind of leads into what we were talking about earlier about yes, the basics you have to be color like linked to the color identity, but you can get there on a draft point of view if you want to.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've seen you can be pretty aggressive if with the colors you play if you're willing to spend picks on the fixing in this cube. I think the funniest example I've seen of this was a Breya Ethereum Sculptor deck. So that's the white, blue, black, red legend. And this was with the rules where Prismatic Piper can partner with anything. So you can partner a Piper with it. And that was run in a primarily green deck.
I played against that. It was very good.
It was strong, yeah. Did some very powerful things. But if you're willing to spend the picks on the fixing, you can play a lot of colors in this cube. And we've seen like mono green commanders specifically played with a bunch of other colors. So you have to be sort of fairly heavily base green, but the fixing is there to splash some off color cards. But you do just have to bear in mind as you're drafting that you're not going to get to put in basics if you're outside of the color identity. So your fetch lands, for example, your polluted delta, if you're only one of those colors in your color identity, you need a fetchable duel. You can't put islands and swamps in if you're not blue and black.
No, yeah, of course.
And then the other thing to flag up is there are just some little packages that are outside of those broad archetypes we've described as well. There's quite a lot of those, actually. So, for example, there's like Doomsday, Thassa's Oracle, Thought-Lash is a little package that exists in this cube. And that's, I think, a pretty good thing you can draft. You can... we've had a Doomsday deck do really well already, and you can probably just draft that with any of the commanders which draw you some cards and will get you through your Doomsday pile slightly quicker, right? And you can play a sort of generic value-y game up until that point. So yeah, it's not all in those sort of big macro archetypes. There are lots of little packages in there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we're kind of coming to the end of our episode now. James, from your end, kind of like, what has been the main takeaway from like the building experience, the building and play experience of this cube? Kind of like, what have you enjoyed the most, and kind of like, what have you found most rewarding out of putting this together?
It was a lot of fun to put together. It took me a really long time to come up with a list I was happy with. Because it very much wasn't one where you can look online and there's something kind of similar and you can adapt it and change it how you'd like. It very much felt like going from the ground up, which was a lot of fun to put it together. And I've actually been really happy with the play experience for the most part. It is very much still a work in progress. I think I expect this cube to change a lot more in the next sort of year than, say, my powered cube. But it's not as settled. There's I have other ideas of things to put in, and people keep suggesting cool commanders to me, and I want to add them. So it's very much a work in progress. But I've been pretty happy with how it's played so far. I've done just one draft of it. How did you find it?
I really liked it. So we talked about the deck I built in it a bit, but like I'm looking at the deck list. I forgot I had a Grizzlebrand in here. Love to see that. But what I really liked about it is that it scratched all the itches that I was looking for, which is a really nice thing to get from a cube. Of like it. As I mentioned, I'm someone who likes I like the building part as well as the gameplay part, and like the thing I like about I love drafting, which is the main reason why Cube is like my favorite format, because it's like the best draft experience you can get. And the thing I like about Commander, which I've always struggled with, and it's like why on this channel I spent 4 years doing weekly decks, is that I like the brewing part of it. I like doing it once, and then I move on to something else. And that's kind of like how I've always been with Commander. So this experience is perfect for me because it's literally every time I get to build a deck and then I get to give it back to you and I like to do something cool next time. For me, I thought like for me the best part was leaning into the Commander a little bit. For me, I get the impression the best decks are the ones that aren't just being efficient, but are trying to lean into the Commander and get the most out of it. Like you're never going to have the most optimal version of a Commander. Like it's never going to be a 1-for-1 EDH rec to deck you build in this. But for me, I think the decks that will do best are the ones that can make the most out of the commander. So to kind of bring that synergy as combined with the power level of the cards here. And yeah, for me, that was awesome, and I've really enjoyed playing it.
Nice. Yeah, that's really good to hear. Yeah, that's so much the experience as I'm hoping for. Because there's so many really unique commanders that you can bring in, and they're not all fitting into the sort of big archetypes we described. But hopefully, most of them are at least pretty viable. Like I'm hoping there aren't sort of traps in here. But yeah, like one I'm really excited to draft, for example, is Hashaton, Scarab's Fist.
Yeah, that's a sweet card. I love that card. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a black and a white, but then when you discard a creature, you can play 2 and a blue and make a token that's a copy of it. And it's like, that's nothing to do with what Esper's sort of on the face of it doing in this cube, but there's some big creatures and there's some ways to discard cards, so I think you can definitely get there, you know?
Yeah, I think those commanders are very interesting because they're quite open-ended. Like, it's not a... Like, there is a world where, like a card like Tevel, for example, where it does everything, and it's kind of... It's like I guess the fact, because there's so many options, is the nice part about this. And the fact that, because it's a 540, you're not seeing every card, so you're not guaranteed... Like, you're guaranteed to get a commander for your deck, but you're not guaranteed to get the best commander for your deck, and I think that is very important. So cards like Hashdon, I love, because I think I need to build this at some point just because I think it's really cool, and it's very open ended in terms of what you do with it. And I think those are the commanders I'm most excited by, but that might just be me in general. I like being able to finding synergy with my commander that isn't the most obvious, whereas like some of the more recent ones are the value engine plus the win con, if that makes sense. Whereas a card like Hashdon, I think is perfect because it's just it screams do something cool with me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm like hoping there's a good range in there, you know, like, and I actually like that, you know, if you want to show up and draft White Weenie, you can still do that too, you know.
Yeah, and the fact that you can, and again, the fact that there is all the decks here. There is the tempo, there is the aggro, there's the control, there's the mid range, there's the combo. It means that you can't just durdle. Yes, you can pick a 4-color commander to get access to all the basics, but then there's the world of, do I have the mana base to make it work? Should I be doing that? Again, it still has all the complexities and awesomeness of Cube, but with it's like more Cube. It's more design choices, and that's what I like about it, I think.
More Cube in your cube.
Exactly.
Nice. Seems like a good way to end it.
Yep, phenomenal. Yeah, and as we mentioned at the start, the list to this cube will be down in the show notes below if you want to check it out. You can do some drafts. There is the playtest function in Cube Cobra. Check it out. Also, if you have any comments, put it... the easiest way is the YouTube. We are working on some things in the future where we can get more feedback directly from you. More to come on that at some point in the future. But yeah, that is a good place to end it. James, pleasure, man. Thank you very much there. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you all very much for listening. Do give the podcast a 5-star review, all that good stuff, as we mentioned at the start. Until next time, it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from James. And until next week, we'll see you all soon. Goodbye.